actually brought paper or cards and pencils in case anybody wanted to ask questions, because we thought we'd have thousands. But
we can discuss that.
But since we're such an intimate group here, we will dispense with that. Okay.
Yeah.
This aside, okay. So my name is Naomi Khan, and I'm going to be the moderator for this very distinguished panel today. And our topic is women in politics. I'm the chair for the No Vote, No Rumble Coalition. So you see that sign on the No Vote, No Rumble. We're all over the island trying to get the votes, trying to get people registered, and trying to get people, especially Native Hawaiians. But before we start, as is our culture, maybe just hold hands real quick. We'll say anybody want to do a prayer for us? Okay, move on to sorry then. Okay, we're bringing us together today. We thank you for our panelists, and we ask that you guide us in what we give and sharing today. Amen. Thank you. Might be good for me to share how this little panel came about. And so we know that throughout Hawaii's history, women have played a prominent leadership role in governance of our people, from Kahului to Queen Bibi Okalani, and even to, in more modern times, Princess Abigail Kalaniʻakoa. She was the first woman from Hawaii to serve on the National Republican Party, and the first registered as a voter in 1922 in the state of Hawaii. And because Native Hawaiian governance now is a very passionate issue for many of us Native Hawaiians, we thought now was a good time to kind of talk story about women, their role in governance in past, and I don't mean just role in terms of an official kind of role like being a governor or legislature or anything, but just the overall leadership that women have given to our people, and that as we move towards Native Hawaiian governance, we start to think about the values that we would look for in our leaders, encourage women, not just these women, but all women, to start to think about we need help in building our government. And so we can start to now consider, being part of our governance. And we know how difficult it is though when you take leadership positions, because you can't ever satisfy everybody's needs. There's always, you take this position, the other side complains and whatnot. So we thought we'd also ask our panelists to talk about how they meet those challenges, what those challenges are and how they meet those challenges. Because whether it's in a Western government or in a Hawaiian government, human beings are human beings. They're going to act the way they're going to act. Okay, so our panel today are three powerful, passionate, influential, and highly respected Native Hawaiian women, beginning with Senator Pohai Raya. She served now for several years as the Vice Chair of the Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee. Representative Leihano Hano, who's the Chair of the House Hawaiian Affairs Committee, and Representative Karen Awana, who's the Chair of the House Committee on International Affairs. Now, I really find that one interesting because in our governance, as our Native Hawaiian governance, I think we're going to find ourselves involved with international affairs. So we have asked them to share with us now on three areas. One is who would they identify as role models from the past? Number two is their perspectives on contemporary political leadership. What are the compelling reasons for women to be involved in governance? The challenges women in political leadership face, the the solutions for overcoming those challenges, and lastly, their views about the role and responsibility women should take in Native Hawaiian self-governance, including leadership roles in the formulation of such governance. Again, as is our culture, we will ask each panel to tell us a little bit about themselves first. So may we begin with Senator Ryan.
Aloha. Thank you for coming. Appreciate the audience. I've always felt whether the audience is 1 or 100, still address them accordingly with the same respect. My name is Kuhinapapa, and I grew up in Molokai, as we discussed earlier. So hopefully I planted the seed in some of you, which I also do in Manao, encourage the young children that it doesn't matter where you grew up, it's where you're born. I went to community schools. I lived on the mainland briefly when I first got married. I've been in Kailua, where I represent, for 26 years. I've been married for 30 years. And my background in serving the community goes kind of far back in grassroots. I'm very grassroots, and I'm known for that, and I'm very proud of it. I won't shy away from that at all. That's one of the differences between me and my colleagues in the Senate. When I ran in 2010, no one thought I was going to win. Because normally the process is you serve in the House, then you go to the Senate. And I worked for Senator Galataria at the time when I did run, and I also worked under him in the Democratic Party. I also served at the Kailua Chamber of Commerce. It's two extremes in a way. One is very conservative, obviously, and one is not. Dynamics can be very similar. In fact, when I worked for the Chamber, nobody knew I was a Democrat. Well, because it wasn't appropriate to even share that. It was not part of the job. If you're professional, you're not going to mention that. But it was a surprise to a lot of people. Obviously, my district where I live in Kailua is Republicans. But basically, I really think I'm genetically wired to serve. And I have to say that my role model, absolutely, without doubt, very cliche, was my mother, as most of you here. And we are a very maternal, matriarchal culture. And it doesn't surprise a lot of you that it was my mother. But as long as I remember, she participated in community organizations. She taught a lot of young leaders who are now, some of them went through PKO, how to testify what their rights are. And everybody knows, the island of Molokai, all know their rights there. And hearings are full. People show up. They don't ignore the process, they are there. And that's just part of being from Molokai. It's that warrior-like protection of the island. And so that's part of my genetic makeup. People over here tell me, oh, you got thick skin, you're from Molokai, you should be able to handle it. What does that mean? But I think it has helped me serving Mananao a lot, obviously. My father was from the mainland. He's from Michigan, originally, and a lot of people did not know that until I shared it. He's a tall, blonde, blue-eyed German guy from the mainland. And it has helped me in a lot of ways. I think living and going to school in the mainland has helped, because you have to have a broader view, especially socially. And obviously it's helped me in that district. I will say that it has been challenging, but I don't regret my service. I don't know if I can say this on a little, but I worked my ass off, and I'm not going to shy away from that, because I really did. That's why when last Saturday when we did the results, I was okay with it, because I knew what I did for my community. And I still get calls. I got calls earlier this week to keep helping, and I will do that. But I do want to say, as an older candidate, somebody asked me this when I first got in. Oh, what do you need to get there to be a candidate? If you're an older candidate, you have to have a lot of background and experience with community. That matters more than your formal education. But if you're a younger candidate, you should have more formal education, because that's the only thing you can draw on. But I just wanted to share that one piece of advice. Running for office is a lot more, it's very hard work. Campaigning is very hard work. I've worked on other big campaigns and did not realize when you're the candidate, it's a very different level. Sign waving is not as fun, it's actually humiliating. But it's pretty but it is, I'm not going to lie. But it's a wise way of keeping us humble. you're ready to work, the hardest you've ever worked. Why? If I made that the last run, I would have served Hawaii in the U.S. Senate for 36 years. So he said, please don't stop. That's just the nature of what politics is. Because if you're there to serve, it's really not going to last. And I thought that was very good advice coming from such an iconic servant of our community. I think that's all I need to say about myself. We'll answer the rest of the questions.
Yes. Yeah, I also come from a rural area, Kuhinapapa, Hawaii Island, Puna district, very diversified, a lot of different types of people. Plus it's the most affordable place to buy, so a lot of people we have come out from the outside and buy. So I have a different type of people I do work with. Plus we're also one of the, in the poverty level, social and economic, like Wahine, and also Puna. So more than 75% of our people, are on free lunches, free bus. I mean, that's what I'm dealing with. But being born and raised in that area, I mean, for me, it's just giving back of being and serving for the people there. And coming from a really Hawaiian family, makes a difference for me. And like my mother is Hawaiian and Caucasian, and my dad is Hawaiian Japanese. And like my dad, he was also served in the armed forces. He had a 6th grade education and was a Navy equipment operator. My mom actually was a housewife, but she was also an entrepreneur because she was an expert in lauhala weaving. So the land she bought was, bought it 5 acres, and in that time, this is in the late 40s, early 50s, where she bought a 5-acre parcel for $1,500, and that was all from lauhala monies. So in today's world, when we look at what we have, and we have a lot of those resources here, it really shows that our Native Hawaiian women were very aggressive in making sure that the family was taken care of. They would sacrifice their monies. Like when we were going to school and we needed extra money, then she would just weave something, and collect monies, and that was used either to buy school things or to make clothes, because during those days of growing up, we hardly bought anything. I mean, because everything was sustainable. We made our own poi. We had my mother came from a ranch and a farming family, so we had everything. And also we had, my grandmother was really, she, saw the future, so she bought lands too. She bought lands, in the mountainside and also at the beach area. So we always had access to a lot of things, like fishes and all the things that we needed to eat. But they were very hard workers because they made it happen for themselves. And plus, in a time period where we're still with kukuelepo, we're still with, the little lanterns, kerosene stoves. I mean, nothing is more than yet. Still with the water barrels, drinking the water with the mosquito fish in, or using it to take a bath. We're just in that period. But their thoughts were that we all needed to be educated so we could survive in this Western world. And so they sacrificed a lot of monies just to send us all for education. So my oldest brother, he went to Kamehameha like I did. I graduated in 71. He was an engineer. Then my sister, who's the second, just retired over 35 years plus service with DOE as a teacher. And I have a sister that is currently working with Bureau of Conveyances as a deputy register, so she reviews a lot of land documents. Then myself, I'm a retired, correctional officer, 25 years of service. Was the first female correctional officer at Kulani Correctional, which was really a minimal community correctional facility, and we were just doing a lot of the reintegration programs, and also it was a work facility. So I worked strictly with sentence felons, which were just males. And a lot of my co-workers were males. So you can see a female, have to put up with all of these challenges. But they were good challenges because I really learned a lot from that job, because once I knew how to navigate myself, I knew that, if I wanted to do anything else, I could do it. It just gives you that strength, because you learn how males think, you learn how they make their decisions, and also you learn how to take care of everybody, because being a sergeant, and then I retired as an administrative lieutenant, but sometimes acting captain. I mean, I had to work with a lot of different types of staff. I had my staff, my ACOs, I had other staff that worked there. I had the inmates to take care, I had the general public to take care. So just doing that type of work and, just multitasking really, and which females are really good at because, it's in our genes. And for me, I always have this saying, I hate when people tell me, oh, no can, and I'm like, really? Tell me how can? Sometimes when you're trying to problem solve, the issue is there, and then they're trying, and then they just give up, and I'm over there, no, let's keep going. They will find a solution. And I think, that is why, probably in this type of work now. And plus, you have to find that balance within yourselves, because you really have to be polar with yourself. If you're polar with yourself, you have the model here within you too, and being peaceful, then you can go out and help everybody else. So the way I look at correction, coming from that type of occupation, we really, really need to improve our programs, whether it's for the juvenile delinquency and our males and females incarcerated, because it's really about that broken Wahine that everybody has, that broken spirit. And we need to heal it first, because if it's not healed, you can give them all the tools in the world, and they'll come right back in. And what have we done besides wasting money? We did not do any justice for public safety. And it's also with a lot of the progress we have in education too. It's the same way. Because I guess the Western, they like to take things in blocks or compartments instead of looking at the whole. And Hawaii is being holistic. And we know where our place is in life. And we know all our pilina, all of our relationships. So that's, because that's our Hawaiian view of the world. But for the Westerns, it's not their take. So we need to really fix a lot of the systems that we have in place, especially for Department of Education, public safety, health, human services, everything, because they're all interconnected. And actually, that's what I always tell everybody, being a chair of Hawaiian Affairs is the chair for everything else, because it does trickle down to Hawaiians in the end. And because of our high numbers, in the systems, we need to, re-look at it, revisit it with a better lens instead of the Western lens. Because really, there's only two types of people in this world. It's either they're the Aikala, which is all Western, which has all Anunu, the greed, the lili, the jealousy, and everything is about the money. But when you come back into the Kanaka Maoli world, it's about ai pohaku, because you have to be sustainable. And that's how our people lived and survived all these years before the white contact. So if we can change people's thinking and move back into this direction, because once you live ai pohaku lifestyle, the monies will come. But if you do it reverse and just looking at monies, then you get everybody getting money because they all get stressed out. Well, how are we going to pay the bills or whatever? But we need to look at very holistically. And also, I was also a strong not too many women that get into those type of positions. Yeah, so break the barriers again. Yeah, so, and I just got reelected because I had no opponents on the Democrat or the Republicans, but the last three races that I ran, it was like how I say it's gruesome. I mean, you just have to work it. Because you get the primary, you have general, and you really, really work hard. I mean, that's really harder work than working as a correctional officer. Really. And even when you at home, you work harder too than at your work. Yeah, and being in touch with the community is really good because I do have a lot of a big Native Hawaiian population too in my area. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming and listening to my manao, and then we can share more. And now it's Miss Monitor.
Aloha everyone and good afternoon, Representative Karawana. And I'm so glad to see all of you here today. You know, we were thinking, oh, I'm not too sure if we're going to have any turnout, so it's good to see the smiling faces in the audience. A little bit about myself. I'm a fourth-generation resident out from the Wahine coast, born and raised out there. However, my schooling and formal education came from Honolulu. So I traveled back and forth. My parents had me attend private schools in town. And how I came about to where I am today is as a young child and attending private schools. Many of your classmates come from areas where you need a little bit of affluence, right? You need money to attend private schools. And so I would go to my friends' homes in Hawaii and Kailua and see, hey, they have sidewalks and they have street lights. And then I'd come home over into the coast and I'd see the disparity. So at that young age, I always saw there's something not right. And it's just the feeling and you wouldn't hear the sirens, late at night where I lived, that's what you heard. But when I stepped over at friends' homes, it was nice and quiet at night, You could hear the crickets and it's just a different environment altogether. So as I'm going to school, I continue to ask my parents, how come, why is it like this here and like that there? We should have these things, And it actually ran all the way into me attending high school and even college. I continued, it's like a little disgruntledness, I guess, to see the different disparities. And my dad had shared with me, he was quite active in the community with the grassroots and said, you over there, you're always complaining about things. Let's see what you can do. So I helped someone with their campaign and they were quite impressed with what I had done for them. And I would always say, hey, I have an idea. We should do this and we should do that, with my rose-colored glasses. And they said, you really have these great ideas. You should run for the neighborhood board. And I told myself, no, I don't want to join. This sounds something political, and I don't want to be in politics. Who wants to be a politician when they grow up? One thing led to another, and they kept bothering me. You really should join the neighborhood board. And on the last day, I pulled my application, and hoping that I'll just put it in and appease, and then I won't get elected, and then I can move on with the rest of my life. Unbeknownst to me, I was elected. Never been to a neighborhood board meeting. And it was quite an adventure. And so, and as time went on, they said, you should run for office. I said, I don't want to run for office. I don't want to be a politician. This is not one of your life dreams, to be a politician or the lawyer, right? Those two things. You never want to be that when you grow up. So, push came to shove, and I ran for office 3 times before being elected on the 3rd try. And when I was elected, it was somewhat of a bittersweet event because my dad was my biggest supporter, right? He passed away right before the primary. So my sister kicked it in. It's just my sister and I. And she came in from the mainland and she helped me on my campaign. And when they said, you won, everybody's all happy. And me and my sister looking at each other, Dad's not here, right? But then he's looking down after you. And just kind of like reeling it a little bit back as to my work experience. I come from quite a diverse work experience. I worked in the hotel industry, and insurance companies, medical field, Kamehameha schools with Pee-wee. And so I think those different types of work opportunities had given me, unbeknownst to me when I'm here now, you can tap in onto all of those experiences. So when someone's talking about a system, or they use the jargon or language on a different type of program, I understand, I've worked there, I've worked with the people. So I think that's been a big, big help for me. And in addition to the fact that the community that I represent is extremely diverse. You have people coming from the mainland, who's a large voting population. They vote, they get involved. And then you have the largest concentration of Native Hawaiians. You have people who are millionaires or homes that are $700,000, $800,000. And then one block away, you have people living on the beach. You have military, resort, industrial, all the landfills are in our district. The largest, electric power plant is in the district. The schools are restructuring. So there's a lot of things happening, and it's, I think it's the ability to, because I come from the community, I understand and see how time has evolved and shaped us and changed us, that has made me able to see the different dichotomies and the different, being from the private school, knowing about that, and then coming home and then being Native Hawaiian, and it's always like the balance, always the balance. And sometimes you're gonna make people happy again, and then sometimes you're not. But good advice from my mom was, you're just gonna have to try and do the best you can. So when you put your head on the pillow at night, then you can sleep soundly. And I've used that throughout my career here as a legislator. And I'm just so, again, thankful that I could be here to share a little bit of my own with all of you.
Thank you so much. What I got out of this was several things. One, I like that you have to be peaceful within yourself before you can help others. So being grounded, I guess. The other was the genetically wired, because I do believe that educators beget educators. And I mean, look at Lily Kala, right, and her son and her daughter. And politicians beget politicians. So there's something to be said about that. And all the Trask sisters and all of them that are related, like the Ali family, they all seem to be politicians for some reason. But the one thing I found interesting, Representative Hanahano, that you mentioned was, the Western approach to things. You mentioned greed and jealousy and all, and then the Kanaka Maoris approach, which is Aitahaku. But because we have young people in the audience, I'm just kind of curious about whether you see that same thing, because for the young people today, they weren't raised in the environment that you folks are raised. They're raised in a more modern environment. And then what they see on television, and do you think that young Hawaiians today have those same values, that they come from the same place that maybe you folks have come from? And maybe we could ask you folks that too.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, for me, today people like to use the values, our host values, whether they're Native Hawaiians, whether they're Caucasians, whether they're Japanese. I mean, especially like the term kupuna. I mean, you hear Japanese saying kupuna, you hear Filipinos say kupuna, and I'm thinking to myself, how come they're not identifying with their own language for their grandparents? Why are they just using the Hawaiian terminology? Is it just because there's something for them to gain, to identify with the host culture? Or are they really losing their culture too? I mean, because it really makes Hawaiians look more outstanding when you're using more Hawaiian, terminology than using your own language. And actually, for the values, people love to talk about it. And people can, say, pono, lokai. I keep getting tired of listening to pono because you have to live it. When you don't live it, and even when people say aloha, I mean, say it with feelings. If you don't mean it, don't even go there. Because, right now somebody greets me, oh, aloha, and then next thing I look at their actions, there is no aloha. I mean, APAC is a good example. We train people at the airport to greet people. Lasted only 2 weeks, because I'm in the airport every week. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're going to teach a value, you have to live it. And it has to be within you. Yeah. See, for me, I was brought up really Hawaii, so, we have to do all of this because I want to get a couple slaps so you can not so nice words. Yeah, and so you learn to really live with it. Yeah, and that is the problem. Even in this classrooms, you can do it all, but yet, when they do the action, in fact, one time, I went to a charter school, and, they had a table, but then, had kupunas coming through, but where were the people to assist the kupunas? I mean, that's simple things we take, for me, I would take for granted. I mean, if somebody needs help, I'll be right there, but I'm not going to go, oh, you need help or something. I mean, you're just there spontaneously because it's part of you and who you are. But in today's world, with our young people, they either have, I'm pretty sure they're taught, but yet they don't live it. So there's a very disconnect there. And I think to draw that bridge, I mean, we probably, they do a lot of projects and stuff, like the Lo'i, the Tarot. I mean, you can get a lot of value from just doing that kind of project. But then, when the project is pow, so what, the value gone? Did they take home the value? That is the most important thing, is to take home that value and live it, and making sure the whole ohana is with the program. Because this is who we are. Because once you start losing this type of connections in the ohana structure, then you really don't know who you are. I mean, take for example, everybody greet, right, in the old days. How are you? I mean, something simple. But that's Hawaiian because they want to know if you're okay and if the family is okay. It's not being maha'oi. Because if they know you're okay, then they know at least the community is still safe and healthy. But when you start telling them you're pilikia, they'll listen, and then sooner or later you see somebody going over there, go visit to make sure how they really are. Or they bring kuolos over there, whatever they make, because sometimes you don't have time to cook, or maybe they need help, making things.
For me as a Native Hawaiian serving in the Senate, the biggest challenge I found was addressing contemporary Hawaii issues that affect not only Hawaiians, but all of our people. And what I found most challenging is the economy, especially on Oahu, because we are such a densely populated area. And I had people come from Mauka to my office, and I had to explain to him, I agree with everything you're saying, but I have to be mindful of the living Hawaiian today who needs to feed his family on Oahu. And that is what I see in front of me. And if it means job creation, I cannot ignore that, because they don't have aina, beautiful aina like Molokai where they can farm. These are people that barely can survive and trying to pay their rent in a multi-level urban setting. And I have to say that has been the biggest challenge for me personally, is without, and Fee and I had this conversation several times, how, okay, I understand the rural needs, but at the same time, the needs are not the same that we have to meet in order for our fathers to be able to work and feed children. And the media has asked me actually this last campaign, oh, why are you getting so much support from trade unions? Well, my husband's in the trades. That's one reason. But because that is the equalizer. I feel strongly that is the equalizer, especially for our Hawaiian economy. That the trades are what give them decent wages so that they are able to feed their families, plain and simple. And they provide a bar within the labor sector in our economy that if you take away the benefits and the wages that they provide because of the labor advocacy, you will see the wages drop drastically. And how do they feed their families? When people understand this is not about power for me, this is about people feeding their kids, being able to survive, especially if you have more than one child. I mean, you can make a decent wage today and still struggle. The average rent in Kailua is $3,000. $3,000 is the average rent. That is the average rent in Kailua. And yes, exactly. And Waikanaga is not that far behind because it's a desirable area, the Windward Coast. But for me as a mother, I only know what I see and what needs to be addressed. And that to me has been the biggest challenge. Is that as much as I would want our Hawaiian families to, have their own farm plot and their yards, I want them to, but not everybody has that living situation. We are an urban center. And obviously I've been criticized because the results have shown, but parts of my district are very against any kind of development. Well, okay, but we can be against development, which is something I will never do, because you'll take away the inventory. When you take away the inventory of choices for people to live, it's going to get worse. If you limit the inventory for housing, the cost of living is going to be it's going to be out of control. And guess who us who live here a long time. That's what's going to affect the most. My grown children live with me. I mean, luckily we don't see each other that much. And it's funny, in a conversation, one of my colleagues made a joke because I said, anybody lives with their kids? He goes, well, I have to live with my parents. He's a rat. And he said, it's not easy either, you're living with your parents. But that's just the reality of where we are today. But it's just creating policies considering all of that, while protecting what we need in the rural settings and the neighbor islands and the policies that are valued.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I want to share with the framing of the question.
The question really had to do with youth and whether their values today are the same as your values, in that we talked about the Western culture versus the Hawaiian culture, and whether young people today come from that Western culture or that Hawaiian culture.
I believe that the youth coming now today, I have a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old. So I think they have a little bit of both, but their lens is a little bit different, and it has a lot of technology attached to it. So they're able to get to that, that end result with the touch of a button, or anything that they need. Their resources are at their fingertips. Whereas, for example, when I was growing up, a lot came verbally through the interaction, direct physical human interaction with your tutu or una, and your moms and your aunties and your cousins going fishing, and fishing now may not be the same for when we were growing up. Might be on a video game versus actually getting out there with the poles and late at night, or your cousin showing you how to do that. So I think the ability for them to gain access to things comes through technology at a much faster rate. So they get this overload of information all coming in at the same time at their fingertips, where we kind of move through the process and learn as time went on. But with regards to them knowing about who they are as Hawaiians, I think it's all dependent upon their environment, what kind of home life, what kind of, home life, I guess, yeah. Home life, and maybe even a little bit of school and their peers, what kind of environment their peers provide for them as well.
What I'm going to say with Rep. Panahama, we laugh about it, but I think it's a good standard to use. She asked people, are you from here? And whatever the answer is, are you gonna die here? It sounds funny, but when you think about it, that is the investment you have in our Hawaii. And we laugh about it all the time, but when you think about it, that's a pretty good standard to use. Because people can be in and out of Hawaii and try to navigate and change our policies or laws, but is their investment, sincere?
And it's kind of sad, Wahine, is that a lot of our youth, they don't see themselves as wanting to be here. They want to be someplace else. They see the hardships of grandparents and parents and the environment, and they don't want any of it. They want to move to the mainland where perhaps they can have a good job, have adequate schooling, buy a home, and they've seen others do it, and they want to reach for that.
So our Hawaiians are, younger Hawaiians, they now are more global,
Yeah.
are more global than just
That's a good balance.
rooted at home. Okay, so we look out in the audience and we see several young people here. And so my question to you is, what are the compelling reasons for motivating them to serve as leaders in our government? It's a compelling reason. Why should any of them, or if they leave here and they go talk to their friends, because we're hopeful to motivate women to start to think about positions in leadership in government, be it the Native Hawaiian government or this government. So if they go and they talk to their friends after they leave here, what's the message? Why should they even consider it? Given the challenges that when you take on leadership, there are a lot of challenges with that. What would be the compelling reasons?
My personal reason was fairness. It sounds kind of monkey, but you talked earlier about disparities. I see a lot of that stuff. And it's in our public school system. It's about the voice for fairness. And in the past, I never saw that in my community. I thought it wasn't there. It was huge. More one-sided to one part of the community and other parts. And I went into this knowing that I have no conflict of interest. I have no interest in a renewable energy company of any kind, and that's, to me, it's made a big difference. Knowing that I don't have nothing to gain, that this is for the community.
For me, it's just social justice. Because when we look at our history and where we are today, once we can, find that social justice and also find it with a sense of lokahi, of being in balance. Once we bring that balance back up, then I'll think everything should fall into place.
And I think it has to do with empowerment, knowing that you have the power to guide your destiny. And a lot of times it's like, oh, they can go do it. No, you can. You have the ability to, set your course. And if you see there's something that needs to be changed, take that leap of faith and try and be part of that change instead of sitting on the sidelines and just talking about it. So that's my 2 cents on how they can engage or what can motivate you to engage. To not necessarily, life is not a spectator sport. You're going to have to get there and become, engaged and interact with people.
There's some amount of courage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in this case, I want to interject my own thoughts about this. This is the way I see it. I watch these ladies at work, but they can't do it alone. So I am an advocate. So I go down to the legislature, there's some bill dealing with our public trust lands. We want our Native Hawaiian government, we gotta have an economic base. But if the legislature, they're trying to address the problems with the economy, and in doing so, have to look at every opportunity. And in looking at every opportunity, they may look at our ceded lands and see opportunity. And the next thing you know, possibility that the lands are taken out, they're sold, or they're developed in some way that maybe we as Native Hawaiian people don't like it. you know what? If we're not at the table, we have no voice. We have no voice.
Yeah.
So, and there's
And we
many,
did lose 2 Hawaiians in the legislature in the
Yes.
primaries.
Just the primary.
Yeah.
and so, I mean, you could say this about education and the charter schools and the monies to support the charter schools and whatnot. Again, if we're not there at the table, we're not in the decision-making position. But us women, you know, with the strength, and I know we have strength because throughout history it shows. I give you a good example. I think if I ask every one of you here, as we ask these women, who influenced them the most? 99% will say it's their mother or their grandmother, even young men, because I've done this with youth, both male and female, and I asked them, you know, who is the most influential person in your life? And almost always it was the mother or the grandmother. So, if for no other reason, get angry, be angry, and say, we gotta do something about this. And therefore, it's not easy. I think one of the two of you said you lost several times, but you were resilient, you just hung in there. And so now you're at the table. And we really appreciate that. Okay, so here's the next question. As Native Hawaiian women legislators, what are the challenges women face in the legislature, and how do you overcome those challenges? And because of our time, I'm just gonna, and because we have one more very important issue, I'm just gonna ask you to take about a minute to comment on that, if you don't mind.
Oh, to me, the biggest challenges is the males. Because their thinking is so different. They don't get it. Yeah. It's like blockheads. Sorry, I mean, there's something, I should know because I work with a lot. Yeah.
How do you overcome that challenge?
Oh, it's easy. Just put them in their place. Tell them the truth. Who is the boss?
Well, first of all, if you run for office as a female, you better be a strong female.
Yeah, you gotta be sure.
You can't be the wallflower, you know. You can't be the Pollyanna, because everything's fine, everything's beautiful, you cannot. You have to be able to hold your own in a room full of males. And sometimes in caucus room, it's not pretty, I'll tell you that. But you gotta have courage, must have courage. I cannot say that in the Senate, being a Native Hawaiian woman was a detriment. And I agree, you know, it's kind of male, female, I didn't see that much, because the females we all have one vote within the Senate structure, and they all knew that, and that's what you have, with that one vote to determine leadership in the Senate. I think when it comes to committee and bills, it can be a little bit cannibalism, sort of cannibalism, and it's not about gender, it's about, and it depends what the person's motivation is as far as getting a bill passed. It's not always a good one, I'll tell you that. It's not always good.
Like, let's just say I found, yeah, definitely the male-dominated environment. However, growing up, my friends are males, so I knew how to interact and do that exchange with them. So you do need, as Wahine had mentioned, you really, really need to be strong in your stance and not back down, because sometimes they'll test you. They'll see, you know, how far they can, you know, you're nothing. No, you have to,
My vote is
yeah, you have to
Yeah.
put your foot down and let them know that you're not going to be pushed around that easy. And then also, if I may, it's a lot of Asians.
Yeah.
So even they're coming from their perception of how their core values and how we should be doing this for the Native Hawaiians. So, you know, and then I attended St. Andrew's Priory. So a lot of Asian classmates that I had. So I used my experience there to know how to interact with Asians, because there is a little difference, I'll be honest with you.
Oriental mentality.
Yeah, how what they think is right and how right should be, and framed and put in a box and nice.
But once you learn it, it's
from different ethnic groups, you're gonna have to learn how to like mold yourself into something. So they'll say yes, right, without necessarily giving away who you are as a person. And in other times, just letting them know I won't be pushed around and this is how it is, and then they'll respect you for that. And it's the wishy-washiness that people do not like.
Yeah.
So if you just tell them where you are, where you stand, and this is how it is, then you gain a lot more momentum and respect at the legislature. That's what I found.
Yeah, on one particular bill, I was intentionally absent at the bill signing. But I had to put my foot down. Just because I'm a freshman, and everybody got the message, because I should have been there. I was the only Hawaiian senator not there. But it got to the point where I had to say, no, I'm your colleague, I'm not a staffer anymore. But that was the other challenge I had, going from staff to the Senate as a senator, which is not unique to me. I mean, it's happened before with other people. But I think that in that case, there was no other way to put it to rest. I had to take that drastic action and not show up.
Okay, so this is the last question. As we talk about Native Hawaiian self-governance, what role or responsibility do you see women having in the formulation of that government, as well as sustaining that government?
Equal role to men.
Yeah.
I don't think it's either or. Whoever's the best leader. Hopefully there will be a lot of women. But I also want to say that as a community, as a Hawaiian community, that we need to nurture and edify our men more too. Because that's another thing I'm seeing that we need to work on. Malama did a better job. Because I think that there's a lot of male leadership that needs to be developed more on the grassroots level. We need to honor that.
Any other thoughts?
I think women should take every possible role that's out there that you would like to take, right? Don't let don't let us limit you, or don't let you limit you. You know, see what you would feel most comfortable in, and not be afraid to step up to the plate and engage.
No, before we go on to phase response, I just want to ask, did your mothers ever tell you there's something you couldn't do? No? See mine?
Yeah.
Like, were you close to the father?
That's how it's going.
Yeah, they told me I couldn't, and that meant show me you can.
Yeah.
And people, when they said you can't get in as a Republican, I said I will show you I can,
Yeah.
and I did.
Before we close for today, do you folks have any questions you want to ask these three ladies? Yes? I have a couple. Yes. How do you guys keep balance? How do you keep balance like in your home and your family and connected, and then going to the office with all these sharks just swimming around, and then how do you choose to make a choice based on your culture and your family and that influence? How do you make those choices and say, you know what, it's always, like you always say, like how do you balance the perspective, like the modern Hawaiian, what is in your mind? So I'm curious to know how you create that balance.
Well, I don't recommend this job if you have young children.
Yeah.
I don't think you should do it. Seriously, I think your children deserve more attention than that, because this job sucks up all your time and energy, and you have to have a very good spouse.
Yeah, very supportive.
Yeah, and
Understanding,
Otherwise-
patient.
opposite personalities, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise,
Patient,
yeah, patient.
supportive. As far as the culture, I think when I first got in the ledge, looking at bills, your Na'au tells you right away when it's wrong. It's a bad thing. That was my experience.
And plus, all of your, experiences in life really guides you too. Because, we have challenges and issues. Sometimes you make the wrong, decision, but then you still have to pick yourself up and look for the
As long
better
as the
decision.
intent was there,
Yeah.
it was good.
So you're always evolving into a better leader. It's ongoing. It's never ending. But then you always must remember, who you are, where you're from,
journey as a single mom raising 2 young children in elementary school. So it's interesting that you bring that issue up. I think everyone handles it differently, but what I chose to do, as I had mentioned earlier, my father was quite involved in the community, and my mom was going out getting her master's. So a lot of times they would take me on these meetings. So me, along with other youth my age, would be sitting around waiting for mom and dad to finish that meeting. So when I took this journey, I did the same. I took my kids on the journey with me. I took them to the community meetings, and there they were engaged and understanding what the issues and priorities of the district were. And as now that the older one is an adult now, she sees the value in it, that she's been able to hold herself amongst adults and be able to engage in meaningful dialogue, not being afraid. She actually gave speeches for me at the age of 14 because I was unable to, I had to attend a meeting elsewhere. So, just what I chose to do is bring them in on the journey, have them engage, and have them be a part of the fun.
So my second part of the question when you mentioned that is my auntie is running for, she's in the general now. I want to know how I can support her the most.
Who is it?
Auntie Cece. She's running for,
Oh my God. Well, my recommendation is, tell Auntie, what can I help you with? Can you be my mentor? Can I follow you around? Then you'll actually get to see the day-to-day work and activities, and perhaps one day you too might consider.
I just want to know how I can support her